What if everything you thought you knew about sex, desire, and self-worth wasn't quite the whole story? This is The Reveal, a podcast about what happens when we ask better questions about the most intimate parts of being human. I'm Elle, certified sexologist and life coach. And every week I invite therapists, sexual health experts, wellness leaders, and cultural thinkers to help us explore the layered and often overlooked space where sexuality, identity, and emotional truth meet. These are conversations about how we heal, how we connect, and how we find real joy and relief in a world that doesn't always make either easy. Curious? So am I. This is The Reveal. Oh, and just a heads up, sometimes when I forget a word mid-sentence, I jokingly substitute it with the word vagina, even if it doesn't make sense. It's a habit, but honestly, it makes me laugh, and hopefully you too. Today we're asking a question so many of us whisper to our friends after another awkward coffee date, a half-hearted swipe session, or a ghosting that stings more than we'd like to admit. Why does dating suck right now? Dating apps promise endless possibility, but often deliver exhaustion. Communication feels harder than ever, expectations feel higher, and somehow, even with more options at our fingertips, true connection feels rarer. In this episode, we'll explore what's making modern dating feel so bleak, from technology to capitalism, shame to vulnerability, and importantly, how we can begin to shift our approach so that dating doesn't just drain us, but becomes a space for curiosity, joy, and genuine connection. So if you've ever thought, it just can't be me, dating really is harder these days. This conversation is for you. Myisha Battle is a certified sex and dating coach, educator, and author. She is the host of KCRW's How's Your Sex Life podcast and writes the Real Love column for Time. Her book, This Is Supposed to Be Fun, How to Find Joy in Hooking Up, Settling Down, and Everything in Between, is available wherever you like to buy books. She has a popular weekly newsletter, The Pleasure Dispatch, which explores modern relationships and is the talk of the town. Myisha lives in San Francisco, California, and works with clients worldwide. Welcome, Myisha. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Elle.
Oh, thanks for coming on. I'm
course.
a big admirer of yours, and
Same.
Well, thank you. And I wanted for everybody to see this is Myisha's book, which is fabulous.
Thank you.
And I'm going to put where to get that in the show notes at the end so you know, and where to sign up for her newsletter. So at any rate, so let's get into it. From your perspective as a dating coach and a sex educator, why does dating feel so fucking bleak and exhausting for so many people right now?
Yeah, I think that it feels bleak for a number of reasons. And I think everyone's pain points are different. But from my perspective as a coach, what I've seen is that over the last decade, I've had clients who have really struggled with their relationship to dating apps. I think that before, people maybe tried them, had one or two that they were working with. And then I saw, oh, wait, people are using like 5 or 6. Like there was this kind of critical mass that happened. And now I'm seeing more and more clients who are like, I don't want to use the apps either anymore, or I never want to try them. Or they're like, I'm just burnt out by the whole process. So I didn't see that level of burnout as much 10 years ago when I first started my practice. And now it's just prevalent because there's just so much out there. And I think a lot of empty promises on behalf of dating app companies, we're the app that's meant to be deleted, find your true love, all of these things that, it's nice to see such a large volume of people who are potentially, your partner or partners, but it's also really overwhelming. And this is really the first time in our human history that we've ever dated like this, where we've been forced with so much choice. So I think that's part of where the burnout comes from, is just, feeling like you're just at a sea in 1,000 million faces. And then I think that the swiping mechanism is really a problem, and Match Group itself is, they've come under fire and have received lawsuits regarding the kind of gamification, the the gambling aspect that
Yes.
they've introduced into the dating apps, which is actually quite addictive and not good for our mental health. So all of those are really, really standout reasons. But I mean, I could go on
Yeah.
because there's so
No.
much that's
Yeah.
bad.
Oh, I have so many questions just popping into my head right now. But I I'm not dating right now. I've sort of decided to decenter men at the moment. But I have friends who are dating, and it is just a nightmare for them. They cannot believe how I think it's kind of like there's a special type of online dating personality, and they always seem to get this people that do the same sort of things, or expect the same sort of things. It's more of a throwaway than it is looking for a real connection, I find. I mean, I met my ex-husband on matchmaker.com. That dates me. I'll tell you how old I am. And I just won't do the apps right now. I just won't, because it's too depressing and it is too bleak. Is it worse now, or are we actually just more aware of the dysfunction and the gamification and how addictive it is?
Well, I want to circle back to something that you said about decentering men. So just curious if the friends that you have who are really struggling on the dating apps are also dating men. They're women who are dating men. Yeah. So something that is new, or maybe it's not new, but we have a new name for it, is, and there's a couple names for it, but there's this general sense of heteropessimism. So I think that this was sort of starting in the 90s. Sex and the City was not painting a very optimistic picture of what dating was like for women. It was a pretty homogenous, view of what dating was like for women in that era, but it still was not, it was kind of revolutionary in the fact that it didn't depict women kind of sitting around waiting for dates and just dreaming and dreaming, dreaming of their fantasy man, except for Charlotte, who sort of embodies that archetype. But what we see now is this shift to complete heterofatalism, which is, this is an institution, or this is a sexuality that is sort of doomed from the start. It's not just that we kind of struggle to find a silver lining here. It's just this institution is dead and nothing has come to replace it. So I see that a lot with my straight female clients. And I've actually coached quite a few women who are really open to the idea that they might find love and partnership with a different gender other than men. So that's a big trend now too. I think there is this shift, and it's as a result of so many cultural shifts that we've already seen regarding women taking on more of their own lives, not letting men sort of dictate what they can and can't do in the world. So having careers, being independent, making their own money, those are really important things, while also doing still the care work of having really beautiful friendships and, planning girls' trips and doing all the things. Whereas men have kind of lagged in this. We see men who have, they're now the ones who are not getting higher education degrees at the same rate as women, whereas it used to be flipped, right? More men had educational opportunities than women. And so we've now seen this sort of teeter-tottering, and I don't see a lot of men really talking about this fruitfully. In fact, so much so that just yesterday I saw the therapist Terry Real. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, I am.
Just sort of talking about the reality of this, that there's been a shift and men have been left behind, but that's not really the time to just either become bitter and stay where you are, or to sort of pick and choose and use some of the niceties of, therapy speak and like pretending that you're kind of this enlightened man, but still carrying with you the kind of toxic male entitlement. And I thought that that was a really good point to make, is that there hasn't really been a movement within straight men to step up and take their rightful places as women's equals. We were like, hey, we can do anything you can do. And we haven't really seen that effort on behalf of men yet. So women are just like, why would I do this to myself?
Exactly. I mean, when I'm talking to my friends and, I'll say something like, well, if you have a reject that you think is good for me, I'd be open to meeting, like maybe not good for you, maybe good for me. And they're like, well, why don't you just go? I'm like, no, I don't want to have to deal with, because like, who's going to tell them? Who's going to tell them in a way that they'll hear it, that we don't want to be treated in the same way that we were treated before and that you grew up on because you were trained this way, and that we are so there to give back and be an equal partner if we're getting the same back to us. We just want everything reflected. And it's just harder and harder for them to find someone that doesn't just speak the speak and who actually shows with actions that they get it. They were raised in a certain way and that's not the way it is anymore.
Well, and it's so hard, I think, for men to not take the criticism that men have historically been perpetrators and, the reason why women are afraid to go on dates. You know what I mean? It's just like, that's not you, right? But so it's not exactly personal, but I think to be a good partner, to be a good human, is to understand that we all kind of enter this world with a different set of risk factors. And I've been trying to figure out a really good analogy to make that point more evident without it eliciting that defensive response.
Right.
And of course, that's very feminine of me to try to figure out a way to soften the blow of something that is true.
Sure. Uh-huh.
That people, men, refuse to accept as true, right? It's just like, are we living in the same world? Like, I don't know how you can be a man and see what men do and not be like, dude, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
And that's all we're asking for.
Yeah.
Is that acknowledgement that like what men do in this world is fucked up. And like, you can separate yourself by just not being the problem and not trying to, gaslight women into believing that that's not the case, that
Exactly.
like men are these upstanding, wonderful people. And like, as a whole, we just can't say that. What we can say is that there are great men out there that are doing the work to try to understand what masculinity has done to them, their fathers, their brothers, their uncles, their cousins, you know what I mean? And just sort of like look around and go, oh, do I want this? I don't think so. Well, what are the alternatives? There aren't any. Oh my gosh, I guess I should probably learn something else. Like I should try to figure this out. And maybe I should recruit other men to help me understand. And maybe we should all be supportive of each other as we try to unlearn and relearn and all of these things, which is what feminist activists were doing. The consciousness raising groups of the 60s, 70s, and on have all been small groups of women going, hey, this isn't right. And we have to figure out how to make it right in our own lives. And it's going to be a struggle. So we need to keep meeting and keep meeting and keep talking and keep talking and keep motivating each other to figure out how to carve out the kind of lives that we want to live. And I think a lot of men are living lives that they don't want to live, but they're in a position where it's not masculine to admit that.
Right. And it is really, really hard and difficult in a way that I don't think that they are too familiar with, is having to dig deep and get vulnerable in a way that invites collaboration in a relationship or even just a friendship. It's just like, let's just start with friendship, and it's it's so interesting. I was listening to somebody the other day and they said something like, strategy, what was it? Strategy isn't the same thing as standards. And I thought that that was a really, really good way of putting it, because I grew up in the 80s and it was all about having the men choose us, and we did everything. We tried to be thin. We tried to be pretty. We were all, and then we took the roles. If we weren't those things, we took the roles of like, the John Hughes movie, funny best friend. Um, but now I think women are really looking at this and just going, like you said, just like, why would I do this? I, I, I have my friends, I have my family. I know what it is to be seen and to be respected and to be valued. And I can have standards, but I'm not going to go with the strategy anymore. And the same for men. I want this kind of woman. I want that kind of woman. It's just like you can have standards, but the strategies of, going to the places where, going to the gym to pick up somebody or saying certain things in text that will elicit a response that you're looking for, tactics. I think those are becoming less, I think for women, it's become less of a strategy and more of a standards.
It does make a lot of sense. And I am fearful that one strategy, which was like more the pickup artist and the women's magazines offering you 10 ways to please your man or 10 ways to dress to drive him wild, right? Okay.
Right.
So on the side of women, we've seen this kind of movement in like, have you seen the trend of like man repeller outfits, so just dressing for you, dressing for comfort, dressing for style, but style that is like not inherently attractive to men. And then we have the right who's saying, no, we need cottage core, we need your boobs out so we can see them, but you also need to be very demure and virginal. So like, of course, we're kind of in that little teeter totter. We're always in that, right? But it just feels maybe more heightened now. So I don't know, pickup strategies, I've seen that kind of fall by the wayside. But what I am seeing more and more of from all genders that I work with is a reliance on ChatGPT or Claude or, these other sources for help and guidance in really real human sticky communication issues, And so that's where I worry about where are we going with that, and how is our like pretty like strong willingness to just rely on these tools to guide us through human interactions, how's that going to shape our love lives and our dating lives? I don't know, but I'm always fascinated when a client tells me this is how I'm using ChatGPT.
Amazed at it. I mean, this dovetails into my next question, but I'm still just amazed at someone saying to a friend of mine, or my friend sort of calling them out and saying, are these like just standard answers for you? Or he's like, I'm using ChatGPT because it's easier. And so my next question is now, people are having a hard time communicating, right? Is it a skill problem or a vulnerability problem? Or is it both? Or are we just lazy? Yeah. 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 So I thought,
Both.
walking right into that. Yeah.
I just watched, and it's really weird. I kind of want to write a piece that like this past summer was I either want to call it Virgin Summer, the Summer of the Virgin, or Vaginismus Summer, because both shows that I've watched about virgins, one was just called Virgins, and the other is called Are You My First, include characters with vaginismus. And so, this I've seen in my clients who are dating, having to navigate out in the world. And I think that there's actually a pretty good blueprint being presented by these shows of like, this is who I am, this is what I struggle with, et cetera, et cetera. And those shows really encourage, I mean, it's all talking, right? So you
Right.
have to communicate and you have to be vulnerable. So, and it's awkward. Like, I think the fact that like we're in a moment too where you have to avoid being cringe at all times. And then you have this group of people who are just inherently kind of cringe because like the way that they see sex is so like adolescent, and they're
Yep.
adults, but they're really
Arrested.
trying. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Remedial is what one of my
Yes.
clients
Remedial.
referred to herself as.
Oh,
But yeah, I do think that there's like there's so much posturing, and I don't think that's so much of a strategy, but it's I don't like getting out of this comfortable bubble of saying what I can say behind a screen. And now you're face to face with me and I don't have that delayed reaction time. I have to engage in a conversation with you. And oh my gosh, this conversation could get into territory that, is very real about things that we both struggle with. And depending on who you are, how you were raised, and, what you're kind of inherently, what your threshold of tolerance is for discomfort, um, that could be really, really difficult. It's a big ask, but that's like what dating is. So I bring up the virgin shows because I do see in dating reality TV shows, even for things as kind of like surface as The Bachelor, there over time there's been this emphasis and like you've got to open up, you've got to be vulnerable, you can't just stay in this protected, perfect shell. You have to be human with someone else. And yeah, I do think that's gotten harder. I mean, for me, I grew up, in the 90s in high school. I graduated high school in 2000. So, like, there's a very cuspy, like, Gen X and millennial energy where a good part of my young adulthood was without a phone. I don't think I got a phone and used it with any like real purpose until I was in my late 20s, mid to late 20s. And so I had already had a lot of really great but vulnerable and awkward situations. I also wasn't worried about those being recorded and put online. You know what I mean? So I do think there's some validity to why people are more closed off, for some of those fears of like, is this person going to go live stream like what what an experience with me is like, and I have to just rely on their interpretation, or their audience is relying on their interpretation. It's a strange thing to be thinking about when you're trying to get to know someone and you're just curious and maybe making mistakes and saying things that are a little bit awkward or off-putting even. So yeah, we're in a moment where this is all really hard, and yet I think it's hard to say having more skills will help. Of course, having more skills will help, but will it alleviate some of those other concerns? No. That's more of a cultural shift that has to happen.
yeah. And I think being willing to gain more emotional literacy so that we can have the tools with which to use. You know what I mean? So then what does a healthy dating experience even look like? So, we're talking about what I think we all feel, which is dating sucks right now, but what does a healthy relationship look like in 2025?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, people are still meeting each other out in the world, and I do encourage people to be really open to that, which part of that means being open to the world. So not being on your phone all the time and not having your headphones in when you're out, doing your life. And that can be difficult and uncomfortable for some people because I don't even think people realize how much of an emotional crutch their devices have become, but they really are. They're kind of creating and I'm guilty of this myself.
Yeah, me too.
Creating a bubble, creating a just like sort of safe sense of safety in a kind of otherwise chaotic world. Like, let's be honest. So I don't fault people for it, but I think if your true intention is to find partnership, you kind of have to be available to the people who are in your life. And talking to strangers is hard, and figuring out how to break through to somebody who's also on their phone is hard. And so there are a lot of challenges to get there. But healthy relationships, I think, are the ones that are sort of built on this mutual understanding of each other's experiences and an acknowledgement of that. And I see that. I see that happening with
You
my
do.
clients. Yes. But here's the thing, I do see more of that happening authentically
Yeah.
on apps like Field, as opposed to, you know, what I really dislike about dating apps is that our idea about relationships sort of fragmented, where, you know, Tinder became the hookup app. That's where I go to have sex with people I don't care about or respect. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, I don't agree with that ever, you know? Um, and then Hinge became the relationship one, Bumble became the like quote unquote feminist one. You know what I mean? There's all these things that get attached to just the tool itself, which is agnostic. The tool doesn't care how you use it. And so I've been with my partner for 7 years. We met on Tinder. You know, it was kind of the last app that I downloaded. I was like, I don't know, it seems pretty chaotic. I like to be more thoughtful and slow, and I was just like unused to it. So I do think that there's opportunity when you take a step out of these more heteronormative, like, and by that specifically, I mean this, you know, Madonna whore fragmentation of like, it's either sex or it's a relationship. And like, you have to choose before you engage. And I love for people to have intentions, but like the fact is you're going to meet a lot of different people, and a lot of different people are going to serve different functions in your life. And you kind of have to be open to that. So the fact that we've kind of normalized, you know, it's okay to disrespect people who you have casual sex with and like not treat them like humans. That's a really toxic dating environment to put yourself in. And then the like, I have to figure out if we're going to get married in, you know, 6 weeks. Like, that's also a lot for people. And I think Field has really just completely rewritten the game in terms of dating apps, because they're so accepting of all different types of relationship, including asexual. And, you know, yes, I think most people, when they think of it as for people who are
Hookup
non-monogamous, people
or
who
yeah.
are into BDSM, and it's very like sex focused. But it's interesting, the more that I've worked with clients and kind of seen how people use it. A client of mine who connected with someone in Australia shared that like where they are in Australia, that's like the most popular dating app,
Wow.
because culturally, I think maybe people there are a lot more open to having conversations about how they want to engage sexually, like like sooner in the
Huh.
process.
Right.
Whereas here in America, where we like to think we have lots of freedom and choice, we have a lot of thought jails that we live in.
Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me started.
Just so many tiny little cells of like, I can't do this, or I shouldn't do that, or, you know, like if I go over there, it means that I'm this. So yeah, I have clients who are resistant to Field, but like in terms of the quality of matches, and of course there are jerks everywhere. So, you know, if anybody listening has had a bad experience on Field, like I get it. Jerks are everywhere. I would never fight you on that. But I do find that when people have been in the toxic dating world of dating apps, and then they go over to Field and they give themselves a little bit of time to adjust, it's like very refreshing for them to have, especially my female clients, have respectful, thoughtful conversations about sex that are very boundaried and like expectation setting. This is a completely new thing to straight people, like completely new, to the point where it's like very challenging at times to be on the receiving end of somebody who gives a shit that much.
Yes. It almost sort of like shocks you into, oh, wait, I'm being treated like a human being on a dating app. I mean, I got to say, I met like my last couple of lovers on Field. I hate that word lovers. It always sounds like a Jill Clayburgh, like 1970s
Lover.
movie. My lover, I'm taking a lover. But I met them on Field, and what Field has done successfully is it's somehow attracted a generalized version of people who are okay with talking about sex. And with that, with people who are experienced in talking about that openly and freely, generally, they are also boundaried. They are consent aware at the very least, and aren't leaning on strategies, you know? And I think if I were to go back to dating on the apps, I would try Field as well. And I think it also comes down to what you put in your profile too, you know, because that's going to ultimately either self-select out people, or you're going to get people who are responding to whatever you're saying. So I have a friend who wants to meet a companion that they have sex, but they also have dates and they go travel and they do this and that. And she's met some great, really fantastic guys on there that she really, really likes. They've become friends, you know? So I think you're right. I think Field is a very interesting expression of what's to come, hopefully, because I tried Hinge as well, and it's just not, it's not good. It's not a
No.
good. And if you're a woman, let's say, how does it look like to explore desire that isn't shaped around the male gaze or approval from men, and be in those situations where someone is asking you what you like and wants to know what your things are? You know what I mean?
It's been interesting watching over the years how so many of my female clients come from the toxic dating world where they don't feel heard, they don't feel like their boundaries are respected, because so much of dating expectations are about men's pursuit and women's receptivity or rejection of advances. And all of this is done kind of covertly, you know, nothing is explicit. It's all quite mysterious. And so when clients come to me, they're like, I just want to like know what's going on. I just want to be able to communicate openly. I want someone to just tell me what they're interested in so I can opt in, which is all great. But then we actually put them in environments like Field where that happens, and it is terrifying. You know, I mentioned before, it can be quite jarring because you also have to do the work of thinking about what you want, because that opportunity is often not afforded women in dating, because you're just like waiting for somebody to come along and like you. So the opportunity to sort of introspect about, how do I want to be treated? What do I want this person to do to impress me? You know, how do I want to engage with them? How do I want that to feel? Those are just not questions that a lot of us get to ask ourselves as women. So, yeah, when you have a guy who's not trying to push his agenda and is rather coming at this from a collaborative perspective of, you know, hey, I want to have good sex. And good sex to me means you're having a good time and I'm getting what I want and you're getting what you want. So, like, we have to figure out if we're a good fit first. then I do think that that's a great opportunity to start to practice those skills of self-advocacy, to say, well, historically, I've never had an orgasm with a partner before. I'd love to see if I can. Is that something you're open to? You know what I mean? Like those kinds of conversations can happen in that dynamic where you have someone who's curious and open and just, I guess, worldly enough. I don't even know what the word is, but like in tune enough to know that sex is a collaboration. Sex is co-creative, and you need two people to be into it in very similar ways in order for it to be the best it can be. So yeah, that's like, I will say, if you have that desire as a woman to be in a more collaborative dynamic, sexual dynamic with a partner, then you also have to do the work of thinking about what it is. Because it's, yes, you need a partner who's going to bring that energy and be open just as you are to having these conversations, but you also have to be able to articulate. And that is often a really hard thing for women to do, is to say, I want this, but not that. Oh, you're doing this to my body? I don't like that. Could you please stop? And then know and trust that they're with somebody who will do those things, because there are men who will stop.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
But unfortunately, too many of us have had the experience that is not the case.
Right.
So it can be quite healing and quite emotional for women to find partners who are able to do that level of connection and to be that responsive and to be that respectful. And I wish that weren't the exception to the rule, but it is.
Yeah, you just hit on connection. And I think that's what I'm seeing more and more with clients, is them not coming in going, I want to date more, or I want a relationship. Them coming in and saying, I want to have a connection with somebody. I think also, coming out of the pandemic, and we didn't really know what to do anymore. It was a whole new world. And then having to learn to relate again. And I think connection is really I think it's in the back of people's minds, and I also think it's in the front of other people's minds, because that's intimacy, right? I know that when I say that I've decentered cishet men, I have friends and I have colleagues that'll say, "Oh, so you don't want a relationship right now with them?" And I'll say, "Well, no, that's not what I said. It's about relating to them differently, right? And having them relate to you differently, and prioritizing my friends and my commitments before just, someone I'm dating, until they become my person, if they do." And I'm wondering, what can we do just as a population to help foster more communication that is helpful and deeper with cishet men who really want to connect, but they just feel like, I don't know, I don't, what's okay now? There's no one there to teach them. I always wanted to teach a class called Sex Ed for Straight Men, and give them not only sex ed, but give them relational skills, give them, this is what's not okay. This is what is okay. The education that they didn't get from the schoolyard, as it were.
Let's circle back and talk about that as a collaboration.
Yeah. Oh, I would love that. It's been, it's been on my plate for such a long time. And it's like, I have people say, no one will come. And I said, I don't know about that. I think there are a lot of great men out there that really want to connect. They just really don't know where to turn and don't know how. And we're just waiting for them to sort of learn so that we can also respond. What kind of, in your practice, do you see, what kind of beliefs or behaviors do men often carry into dating that unconsciously center their needs? And I'm going to say unconsciously on purpose here, center their needs over a mutual connection. And I think there is a lot that they do that they don't realize they're doing that is harmful to them and harmful to a possible connection.
Yeah, God, I'm so fired up because, those videos that go around asking, do women have to take tampons out to pee when they're on their period? And, on this virgin show, they had, actually, it was not Virgins, the show where they follow some virgins, but the one where they bring some virgins together on an island and see what happens.
My God.
It's really fun, actually. You might enjoy it.
I probably would.
It's very sweet at times and very much like, wow, you could be a virgin and still be a fucking asshole.
That's right.
But yeah, I think about all the sex ed that men get and don't get. I think about the just horrible disservice that we've done to young people by not giving them proper sex education. And I'm writing a book about sexual pleasure right now and thinking even the fact that we are separated by gender to hear certain things and learn certain things, I think sets up this dynamic where, of course, when the girls were separated and learning about periods, we were also learning about penises and things and all of that. But like men have no foundational information about how the female body works. Like none.
Zero.
None.
If they don't have sisters or, grow up with a mother who's, you know what I mean? Then. Even then, it's still minimal.
It's just nothing. It's like nothing. I mean, and I will say that like a lot of girls don't grow up learning enough about their bodies too. So like we're bad at doing this on both sides. But the fact that like girls get more, guys get nothing, and then they're also taught that they're the sex experts. They're told that their libidos are stronger
and more important. Yeah,
and more important, and also that like they're going to have to be the ones to initiate or dominate the situation or move it forward because young women are just not as interested, or like that's their role, or that's what being a man is. So I think even the most sensitive and intuitive of boys is going to pick up some of this and internalize it. There's no way that he's not going to. And then there's this sense that I think a lot of men walk around with and do nothing with, which is that they really don't know everything.
Yeah.
And it's true. They don't.
Yeah.
They can't. I don't. Nobody does.
Nobody does. Mm-mm.
But the pressure to come off as if they do is so strong that it's a deterrent to getting help. It's a deterrent from asking questions. It's a deterrent from being curious with your partner. I think there's a vulnerability in saying like, I never learned how women orgasm. And I'm not sure that I have ever been with a partner who's experienced an orgasm while I've had sex with them. Like that's a vulnerable thing to admit.
Yeah.
And I don't know a lot of men who do, but that's what it takes. I think like some of the people who have really surprised me over the years have been like men who knew more about female bodies at the time than I did, like before I was a sex coach, because their mothers were sex educators or like worked for Planned Parenthood or they were doctors, etc. And so, unless you're getting that like direct line to information and a parent, doesn't have to be a mother, but a parent of any gender who is saying, this is important, you should know this as a man. They don't get it, but then they're also walking around with the idea that they have enough information, but a sinking feeling that they don't, but then a cultural expectation that they shouldn't ask for any type of help or support around this.
Yeah.
So I do think that's why we get like the majority of like fucked up male behavior is kind of coming from that perspective. It's like them fumbling and trying to do trying, but trying. I'm really not trying. The thing that I hate most is like being perceived ever as a male apologist. But there is a certain thing where I'm like, yeah, there's something. It's like I can't put my finger on it because I wasn't socialized this way. But
That's
there's
right.
stuff that I know and I see in my work, and I work with some fantastic men who are single, men who are partnered with women who are really trying to understand. But when we talk about the distinction between how women see a potential sexual situation and how he might see it, like that's the meat of it. That's really where we get to, oh, I'm bringing in some shit I didn't know. And she's bringing in some stuff I didn't know either. That's why there's fear coming up, or that's why there's resistance or tension in an otherwise very loving marriage, right? But if you don't address these underlying socializations, it can be very difficult to both have a sense of ease. I think men deserve a sense of ease too. Like, you don't have to know everything. You can read books. I'm writing a
Right.
book,
Yeah.
hopefully, that a lot of men will read. I'm
Yes.
really, crossing my fingers here because I'm putting everything in there, Elle. I'm
Right.
putting everything that you and I and all the other sexologists know, and I'm hoping that it'll stick.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. I
Thanks.
cannot wait. There's something else I wanted to ask, and I thought about this earlier, and it's kind of a segue into something that doesn't really make sense to segue into. But I'm wondering, for you in your practice, do you see a lot of, I know for women my age, I'm 56, and for women my age that are trying to date men their own age, they're not finding that. And what they are finding is tons of men in their 30s, men in their 40s who want to date and who want to date older women. But the men our age don't seem to want that. And I'm wondering if that is the last, bastion, a wasteland of the socialization, someone who's maybe on their, maybe just got divorced or has an empty nest or whatever, doesn't want the complication of someone with their own baggage, because we all have baggage. Newsflash,
Right.
all of us do.
Right.
It doesn't matter what age you are.
That's true.
So I just find it really, really fascinating. Because personally, I don't necessarily want to date someone in their 30s. I want to date someone who's my age, who knows who David Bowie is. And, and who I can say, oh, remember that commercial in the 80s? Something like that. But I don't know how much of that you're hearing and what you say to it, if you have anything to say, anything in particular. Yeah, tell me.
I mean, I'm hearing a lot of it. And I'm reading a lot about women who are Gen X, who are having the best sex of their lives, and, recognizing that some of the things that they feared about getting older aren't necessarily true, and being able to sort of be like, oh,
yeah,
feel so much freer understanding that I don't expire at a certain age. And, so I think there's an interesting thing there. I mean, who's to say? Like, I have clients of all ages who have experienced interest from men who seem too young for them, right? Too like, it's just like, why? And we don't know why. For any number of guys, it could be dating women who are in their 30s in particular carries with it a certain amount of pressure to figure out family planning. That's just, it's stereotypical, but it's also, there's a kernel of truth in it.
absolutely.
And sometimes men in their 30s are not ready for that. Some men love a mommy, are looking for a mommy. And that's, fine if like a woman is ready to take on that role and responsibility. But oftentimes I think it's interesting because it's always about, I'm just kind of working through this in my own brain. Like, I hear a lot of stories about women being surprised that men will want them, right? I'm hearing those stories. And then, the old trope is the man who goes through a midlife crisis and gets a divorce and finds a 20-year-old, right? So it's just more of men wanting, right? And I don't know what to do with that. I do know that for people who are enjoying that, I'm all for it. I love seeing it. I think Madonna is a true weirdo in like the kind of best and worst senses, but she's like really like loving her young partner.
Boyfriend. Yeah.
And Cher has also, like been quite vocal. And I love Cher's just general take about partnership where she's like, what are you like a man? Okay.
Or
Sure.
Whoopi Goldberg. I don't want someone living in my house.
Yeah. I mean, and these are all older women who have seen a ton and done a lot in their lives. And so to have that perspective, I think is quite fun to receive. But yeah, so I think it's cool. And I'm also like, it's just like another instance where women are surprised by men wanting them. And I don't have like a judgment of like whether that's good or bad, right?
Yeah.
I'm just sort of noticing.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
I think also the popularity of the Miranda July book, All Fours, really spoke to, I don't know if you've read it.
I did.
But, you did, yeah. I think I'm not her age group. I'm past menopause, but I think I was able to definitely relate to her and her wantonness and her wantingness. And that was a younger person as well that she was involved with. And for some people, there is a really lovely feeling of acceptance because here's someone who's younger, who wants to be with them and doesn't see what we see and maybe accepts them in ways that someone their own age wouldn't accept them in. And that can also be very freeing. But I think the popularity of that book really is telling to where women are really going out there and they're discovering their erotic selves. And I think having 30s and 40s available to them in that way can be a really wonderful experience. And, who knows?
Yeah, I love Miranda July and I loved that book.
Me too.
And I think that the time of life and the kind of like issue that was sort of being explored and it made explicit by the main character being being perimenopausal it's interesting, but I don't think that's what really. Yes, a lot of women are like, oh, I relate to this experience because I'm in this exact stage of life. But I think what other women who may not be in that experience gravitate towards is the main character's ability to center her own pleasure.
Yep. I agree.
She literally creates a room of her own.
She literally does.
So and so many women feel like they've gone their whole lives creating rooms for other people. So that book does a fantastic job of like, you think I'm one thing, but really I'm another. And I'm going to create the space where I can be that other person completely and without any regrets or any type of restrictions. And that part, I think, is why the book is so wildly popular, is that it's just a purely an exploration into if you had the money and the time,
yeah,
what the fuck would you do, girl? Like,
that's
what
right.
would you do? What wild fantasy would you live out? And for some people, that would be like, oh, I would take a trip and I'd go to a sex club or whatever. It's cool. But All Fours is Miranda July's potential, take on what she would do. Although she's denied that the character is like based on her. But yeah, I mean, I think it's that's what's powerful about it. And I love reading stories that center that, just sort of like, I'm going to just follow this very delightful thread and see where it goes.
It was quite one of my favorite books of all time now, that book. Just love the way she writes as well. Well, thank you, Myisha. This has been a really fascinating and interesting discussion. I always love talking to you because I feel like I can talk at the top of my intelligence and always learn something. So
I love that.
Me
too.
Well, yay. Yay. And let's talk about that sex ed for straight men.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's needed. Bless their heart.
I think it could be a real moneymaker if we do it right.
All right. Well, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. All right, my dear. Thank you again. And we'll put all of the links and all about Myisha in the show notes. So thank you for joining us at The Reveal. Thanks for listening to The Reveal. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need it too. And if you'd like to stay connected, head to ellechase.com to join the mailing list for updates, the Substack version of The Reveal, and early access to new episodes. You can also follow The Reveal wherever you get your podcasts. And if you have a moment, leaving a review helps others find the show. Email for the show can be sent to therevealmail@gmail.com. And of course, if you're on the social medias, I'm at the Elle Chase on all platforms. Until next time, stay curious and remember, the most powerful stories are the ones we dare to tell.